Hi, my name is Savannah Rice, and this is my presentation on sorghum as silage, with all the research credit going to O.E. Reed and J.B. Finch of the Kansas State Agriculture Department. So to start us off with some background information, this experiment was conducted from 1911 to 1913, so over the course of 2 years. And their main objective in doing this experiment was to try and justify using sorghum silage as a corn alternative, because in Kansas State, where they were situated, places around them didn't have corn readily available, but they did have sorghum. So they tried to use that as an alternative to corn, seeing if the fiber and everything else with the components inside the silage would be good enough to keep up milk production, and also gouging its palatability if the cattle would actually eat it, compared to anything else that they might use as an alternative when corn silage wasn't readily available. So as another mention, this was done by the Kansas State Dairy Department, and they use kefir and kefir and cane silage compared to corn. So that was the two different varieties that they used, and they used that locally out of their own fields. And then within the two trials, we had 3 different periods that were used where different silage was used to see how that would impact milk production, butter fat content, and body weight. And this was in 20-day increments. So you use 1 corn silage for 20 days, and then so on and so forth until you reach 3 periods. And then going into the first trial run that they used, though they had 2 different trials, we're only talking about one in this presentation. It was over the course of 1911 to 1912, and within this you had 2 different lots containing 4 cattle. So in lot 1 with 4 cows, there was a corn silage being used for period 1, which had a milk production of a total of 1,333 pounds, with butter fat of 55 pounds, and then an average body weight of all 4 cows being 4,108. And then the second period, this next 20 days, was cane silage being used, so one of the sorghum silages, and that had an average milk production of 1,252 pounds, with 51 pounds of butter fat, and an average body weight being 4,131 pounds. And then for the last period of that lot was corn silage being used again, as this was our control, and then the milk pounds was 1,178 with 49 pounds of butter fat and an average weight of 4,106 pounds. And then in lot 2, again with 4 cattle, cane silage was used first with an average of a total of 1,192 pounds of milk, with 54 pounds of butter fat, and then an average body weight of 4,044 pounds. And then the next 20 days, being your period 2, was corn silage being used, and that was 1,167 pounds of milk, with 51 pounds of butter fat, and an average weight of 3,953 pounds. And then the last 20 days was cane silage again, with 989 pounds of milk, 46 pounds of butter fat, and 4,020 pounds being the body weight average. So all this research is property of the Kansas State Ag Department, as I previously mentioned, and then I added a link down below if you wanted to check out the whole process by yourself. It's a research paper that's about 6 pages and was very informative. So with the differences that we saw after this experiment was conducted was that we had kind of a difference in the 3 categories that I mentioned. So in lot 1, at the end of the experiment, you had a 5-pound difference in milk, using the average from the first period and the second period, and then the first period and the third period, taking that average and then putting that against the second period, as that was the in-between, and you kind of got to see what the difference would be between those 2 silages and how they affected such things. And then you had a 1-pound difference of butter fat, and then a 24-pound difference in body weight. And then in lot 2, there was 76 pounds of milk as a difference, and then 0 butter fat, and then 79 pounds of body weight on average. And during these experiments, hay and grain was kept constant the entire time, so that didn't change, and that was added in addition to the silage to make sure that the cattle were getting something at all. And what we kind of saw from this experiment as a conclusion was that sorghum can be used in place of corn, and as Kansas State pointed out in their research paper, it really truly matters when you're cutting the crop and how you're managing it, and that's going to affect the palatability, so whether or not the cattle are actually going to want to eat the silage that you're putting in front of them. The cane silage within both of the 2 trials, even though I did not mention the second trial, The cane silage was most palatable, so that's what the cattle wanted to eat, which is why there wasn't a huge difference in milk production at the end of lot 1, where corn silage was used more, and then there was a 76-pound difference in milk in lot 2. However, you still saw that it was pretty palatable to keep up kind of a steady pace of milk production over that time. So it definitely causes some differences, and the main importance that they pointed out was when cutting it and also keeping it dry and adding substantial water if they needed more water for fermentation, and the storage of the silage and where it was being kept. So that is the important things that allowed us to understand that sorghum could be used in place of corn as long as you're managing it effectively, and it can be used as a good alternative if corn silage is not readily available. And that is it for my presentation. Again, all credit goes to the Kansas State Ag Department for letting me use their research and citing it in here. And thank you for listening to my presentation.